Balashikha, Moscow's eastern suburb, June 9, 2026, 5:30 a.m. A BMW X3 pulls out of a parking spot near a residential apartment building. The engine turns, the wheels begin to roll, and then the car ceases to exist as a vehicle and becomes a fireball. An improvised explosive device, containing at least half a kilogram of TNT-equivalent explosives, had been planted beneath the floor of the vehicle. As the car moved, the device detonated. The driver suffered multiple shrapnel wounds and fractures. He died at the scene. Russian authorities initially refused to name the victim. For the first time in such an assassination, they kept his identity hidden. But the truth emerged. The dead man was Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov, head of the Operational Training Directorate of the Russian Armed Forces General Staff. He was killed in his own neighborhood, on his way to work, inside Russia's capital city. And the Kremlin's immediate response? They opened an investigation into whether Ukrainian special services organized the murder. Before I show you why this single car bomb just shattered the illusion of safety for every Russian general inside Moscow, hit that subscribe button. This is war conflict. We don't just report the news, we decode the strategy. And the strategy behind this assassination is something Putin's inner circle is terrified to acknowledge. Stay with me. Let me give you the exact sequence of events from the official statements. The explosion occurred at approximately 5:30 a.m. local time in Balashikha, a city to the east of the Russian capital. This is not some distant province. This is Moscow's suburbs. This is where Russian military personnel live. The blast took place approximately 350 meters from the site where another Russian general was killed by a car bomb just over a year earlier. The same neighborhood, the same method. According to Russia's investigative committee, an explosive device was detonated while a BMW X3 car was driving near a residential apartment building. The device had been planted underneath the vehicle, a signature Ukrainian intelligence technique. The bomb contained at least half a kilogram of explosives in TNT equivalent. It was powerful enough to kill the driver instantly and severely damage the vehicle. Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov was not a low-level bureaucrat. He was born March 11, 1969, in Gremyachinsk, Perm region. His military education included graduation from the Kazan Higher Tank Command School, the Armored Forces Academy, and the General Staff Academy. He fought in the North Caucasus, including the Ossetian-Ingush conflict and the Chechen War. He commanded Russian forces in Syria from 2015 to 2016. At the time of his death, he held the post of head of the Operational Training Directorate of the Russian Armed Forces, a senior role responsible for preparing units for combat operations. This was not an accident. This was a targeted assassination of a senior Russian military official inside the capital. Here's what almost nobody is connecting. Sarvarov's assassination is not an isolated incident. It is the latest in a systematic campaign that has been unfolding for years. December 2024. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, head of Russia's radiation, chemical, and biological protection troops, was killed when a bomb attached to an electric scooter detonated outside an apartment building in southeastern Moscow. The Security Service of Ukraine later claimed responsibility. April 2025. Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moskalik, Deputy Chief of the General Staff's main operational directorate, was killed by a car bomb in Balashikha, the same suburb where Sarvarov died. December 2025. Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov was killed by a car bomb in southern Moscow. And now, June 2026, reports indicate that a fourth senior officer may have been killed in Balashikha, potentially Colonel Damir Davidov, head of the main missile and artillery directorate. 4 senior Russian military officials, 4 targeted assassinations, all inside Moscow or its immediate suburbs. The pattern is undeniable. Everyone is asking, why is Ukraine assassinating Russian generals inside Moscow? The real question is, what message is Ukraine sending to every Russian officer? Here's the message. As The Independent put it, with no choice but to box clever against a bigger, more muscled opponent, Ukraine has combined assassinations with bombing attacks in a bid to break the logistical spine of Russia's war effort. And here's the critical part. Hard targeting the Russian general is also a triumph of psychological operations, reinforcing the already well-understood feeling that none of the Kremlin's nomenclatura are safe. Let me translate that. Ukraine cannot match Russia on the battlefield. Russia has more men, more tanks, more artillery, more aircraft. But Ukraine has demonstrated something Russia cannot counter: the ability to reach inside Moscow and kill senior military officials where they sleep. Every Russian general now has to ask himself a question that would have been unthinkable before this war. Is my morning commute safe? Is my car safe? Is my neighborhood safe? As one local resident told AFP after Sarvarov's assassination, "We absolutely didn't expect it. We thought we were safe, and then this happens right next to us." Another resident, more fatalistic, said, "We need to treat it more calmly. It's the cost of war." The cost of war, inside Moscow. Now let me tell you why Sarvarov specifically was targeted. He was not just any general. He was the head of the Operational Training Directorate of the Russian Armed Forces General Staff. What does that mean? Operational training is how Russia prepares its units for combat. Sarvarov was responsible for training senior officers at staff exercises and other events. He shaped how Russian forces fight. By eliminating him, Ukraine disrupts Russia's ability to train its next generation of commanders. Every officer who would have learned from Sarvarov now learns from someone less experienced. Every exercise he would have overseen now operates with a gap at the top. This is not just revenge, this is strategic decapitation. And the timing matters. Sarvarov was killed just hours after Russian and Ukrainian delegates reportedly held separate talks in Miami on a plan to end the war. The message to Moscow is brutal. We can negotiate, but we can also reach you anywhere. Let me give you the number that matters. A car bomb cost a few $1,000s to construct and plant. A few thousand. The value of a lieutenant general with decades of specialized training, combat experience, and strategic responsibility? Priceless. But if we assign a conservative replacement cost, the training pipeline for a Russian general takes 30+ years. The ratio is impossible to calculate precisely, but it is astronomical. And here's what makes this different from military attrition on the front lines. When Russia loses a general in combat, they can blame the fog of war. When Russia loses a general to a car bomb in Moscow, there is no fog. There is only the terrifying realization that the enemy is already inside the gates. Here's the thing. The most expensive thing Ukraine destroyed on June 9th wasn't Lieutenant General Sarvarov. It was the assumption that Moscow is safe. For 3 years, Putin has tried to maintain a bubble of normalcy around the Russian capital. The war is far away. The bombs are on the front lines. Life in Moscow continues as before. That bubble just burst. Not because of a missile strike, not because of a drone attack, because of a bomb planted under a car in a residential neighborhood at 5:30 a.m. The Kremlin has tried to control the narrative. They initially refused to identify Sarvarov. They have downplayed the assassination. They have pointed fingers at Ukrainian intelligence without offering proof. But every Russian general saw the burned BMW. Every Russian officer heard about the explosion. Every member of Putin's inner circle is now looking at their own morning commute differently. Ukraine has not won the war with this assassination. Wars are not won by car bombs. But Ukraine has demonstrated something that may be more valuable than a battlefield victory: the ability to make Russia's leadership feel vulnerable in their own homes. As one analyst put it, Kyiv wants Putin's most important generals to ask themselves whether 500,000 dead, widespread political oppression, economic isolation, and global sanctions have been worth it. The car bomb in Balashikha is not just a weapon, it is a question. And every Russian general who heard about Sarvarov's death is now answering that question in the privacy of their own thoughts. I want to leave you with something that didn't make the headlines. When Russian investigators arrived at the scene in Balashikha, they found a burned BMW, shattered glass, and a body that had been thrown from the driver's seat by the force of the blast. They also found something else: witnesses, local residents, men and women who had lived through decades of Soviet and post-Soviet history, people who thought they had seen everything. "We thought we were safe," one of them said. That's the real casualty of this assassination. Not a general, not a car, not even the Operational Training Directorate of the Russian General Staff. It is the assumption that Moscow is different, that the war stays on the front lines, that the capital is protected. Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov was killed in his own neighborhood, on his way to work, inside the most heavily guarded city in Russia. And if it can happen to him, it can happen to any of them. Putin's generals now know what Ukraine's intelligence services have proven. There is no safe distance. There is no impenetrable security. There is no bubble. The war has come to Moscow, and the only question that remains is, who is next? I'm War Conflict. Subscribe, because this war is no longer just happening on the front lines, it's happening everywhere.